Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Unraveling Reality. In this episode, I want to tie in some concepts and some things I talked about in two previous videos with what is going on over in Eastern Europe right now. And so one of these videos was about creating narratives. And so I want to look at that aspect of what's happening right now, kind of look at how the narrative is being crafted and the mechanics of it, and then some of the deeper implications, things that it's referencing from nostalgia and from history, and trying to put that into the mind as well. And the other video was the last video I did about the Super Bowl. And surprisingly enough, some interesting connections surfaced in this particular Eastern European theater that's going on now. And there are some parallels. It's interesting. So I'm going to be trying to do that in this video, and hopefully I present this adequately. So I wanted to begin by looking at just kind of the craziness that is going on overseas right now. And so I don't want to do that. I want to do this first. There we go. So I'm just going to scroll through some of these headlines, and you're going to start to kind of see how there's a story, there's a pattern, and you can see how this is all working. The fact that people are just spontaneously showing this undying support for the Ukraine during this time, almost as if on cue, as if they're just playing their part. And you know, the strings are being plucked through articles like this. And so this is kind of like the narrative being built. And you can also see that within this, you know, this is how you shape reality. This is how you shape people's perspective about what's going on. And as we're going to see, it's also going to shed some light on how this might have happened during a different conflict. So the whole world right now needs to unite. Rallies are being held across the US in support of Ukraine. Waving Ukrainian flags stop the war, protesters rally around the world. So they're telling you that everybody's for Ukraine. Everybody's making signs, they're waving flags. The whole world right now needs to unite. So this is kind of the theme I see happening. This idea of trying to create unity through a shared enemy. And so you pick somebody. This time it's Russia, but it's really Putin. And this has been building since probably, it's been a long time. But really since 2016, when Trump got elected, we have just seen this demonization of Russia in the media. And, you know, it has its ebbs and flows, but this has certainly been a narrative that's been building. Russia bad. So we're looking at, you know, people have even said that this is possibly a second Cold War. And, you know, it certainly fits that bill as well. But the Cold War followed World War II. And so this also has hints of World War II and some of the things that are going on. A song of defiance, Ukraine's national anthem being heard all over the world. Saturday Night Live opens with Ukrainian chorus singing prayer hymn. Right? It's just covering all the bases. Everybody's singing the national anthem. You've got Saturday Night Live with these traditional Ukrainian chorus happening. Hundreds rally in Portland for Ukraine against Putin. Portland, Oregon, jumping in. Here we got Ukraine supporters in Alabama protest Russian invasion. And I'm just taking a sample of today's headlines. This is just stuff that's come out, either today in my news feed or things that I've found that are recent. So I'm sure there are plenty of other articles from state to state, city to city, with this type of this programming. Obviously, this is to shape the opinion of the American people, at least in the West, but I would imagine Western Europe as well. And so we're all kind of getting the same propaganda. We're all getting the same script because the overriding theme here, it's about unity against a common enemy. Thousands of Russian tech workers sign a petition opposing Putin's invasion of Ukraine. Chelsea owner Roman Abramovich gives up control of his team amid Russian invasion. So even the Russians themselves, the media is being very careful to include articles about how Russians themselves do not support Putin. So this isn't really Russia. That's kind of what we're being led to believe here, that this is nothing about Russian nationalism. This is all about Putin. And so Putin is now the new boogeyman that will unite us all against. And it's funny that this is happening now when they just were dividing people over all of this medical stuff, and how quickly all of the states, most of the states, even Oregon, the state I thought would never get rid of their mask mandate, they're getting rid of their mask mandate. And it's like within a week or two, the last 2 years are just, well, that's over with. Let's all unite now. Let's all unite against a common enemy. And they're making it really easy, as we're going to see. Potent protest. Bars drop Russian vodka, promote Ukraine's. So it's just all this one-sidedness already for you, all scripted out for you. All you got to do is just follow along, right? It's very expensive right now to not support Ukraine, to not fall into this narrative that's being given to us. So it's to even question this, or to say, I'm not for Russia, but let's take a deeper look at what's really going on here. That's going to be a very unpopular view to most people, because they're very firmly invested in the narrative, because to go against it is too expensive for them. They can't handle that. So it's easier for them to believe in this and put their, change their Facebook profile to support Ukraine and all of these things. Former player Stakowski enlists in Ukraine's reserve army. So we've got pro athletes, a tennis player quitting to join up the Ukraine army. The IOC urges sports bodies to cancel events in Russia. So sports are getting involved. Hollywood's getting involved. States are getting involved. Businesses are getting involved. I remember not that long ago, there was a country that some people in America really wanted to boycott because they were doing something they really didn't agree with. And those people were not allowed to do that. It became illegal to boycott this certain country. But here we are boycotting Russia. this massive behemoth landmass by taking vodka off the shelf. And how long is that going to last? As if just removing vodka from shelves is going to impact the economy of Russia to such a degree that they just see the error of their ways and pull back all of their troops. Guys, we can't make it if Americans don't buy our vodka anymore. I mean, that's like our only money-making thing we got going. So, I mean, it's just ridiculous but that's what we're doing. Now you got Ukrainians fleeing. So there's like this railroad, and some people are walking 15, 20 miles to the border in Poland, and 100,000 people have crossed the border into Poland. So it's a mass exodus from certain parts of the Ukraine over the border. So we're getting that narrative. And then we've got, TV land. Max Chermovsky, whoever this is, calls Kirstie Alley out for war post as he shares new updates from Ukraine. After Kirstie Alley said she didn't know what's real or what is fake regarding Russia invading Ukraine. She didn't know what's real or fake. I wonder why. We're going to see some more. But they had to call her out on that, right? You cannot even question that, Kirstie. You can't say that there might be some shenanigans going on. Cleveland's Russian Cultural Garden to remove Russian flag in protest of invasion of Ukraine. Old Ohio, good old Ohio. We're going to talk about Ohio in a little bit. These are just a snapshot of all of the articles of vodka being removed from shelves across the country. It's absurd. This is beginning to look like an orchestrated wag the dog type of theater. And this is the Ohio governor. DeWine calls for Russian vodka to be removed from shelves. Production halted. Dun, dun, dun. That'll show Putin. Here we go.
Pulling all the Russian vodka from our store per Ohio governor's order.
But this is going to make a difference. Anyway. Elon Musk activates Starlink satellites in response to Ukraine plea. I'm Elon, I'm here to help. Despite Bolsonaro reluctance, Brazil votes against Russia on UN resolution. Bolsonaro is supposed to be the bad boy who stood up to the all of the COVID stuff. And he's an interesting character, but even he can't go against the narrative. Bolsonaro reluctantly, I guess, what choice do I have? I have to play along, even if I want to maybe do something different. Sean Penn, though, is on the ground in Ukraine filming a documentary, and he says Putin has made a most horrible mistake for all of humankind. It's interesting that Sean Penn is filming a documentary in the Ukraine at the exact time Russia invades the Ukraine. Guatemala president orders return of ambassador to Russia. Guatemala's getting in on the action. Everybody wants a piece of this narrative. Look at me over here. I'm going to do something I'll help you, Ukraine. BP says it will exit its 14 billion stake in Russian oil giant Rosneft over Kremlin invasion of Ukraine. BP. And also, Hayden Panettiere clarifies that her daughter Kaya is safe amid Ukraine invasion. That's heartwarming. That's really good to know. And then there's this lady. Now, I don't have any of the other headlines that use this photo, but I think that they've recycled this photo for several different events. But don't quote me on that. I'm not sure, but this beauty queen right here, this Ukrainian beauty queen, emerged bloodied but alive in an iconic image of Russian missile strike, shows off her love of nature in charming pictures from before Putin invaded her homeland. Putin himself invaded her homeland. That's it. So it's all Putin. We can see that. And look at this. This is very reminiscent of the Boston bombing photos. It's like a complete photo shoot going on. So yeah, this woman looks like she's just posing for pictures. And of course, we have the mysterious wooden guns that the Russians are using as they invade the Ukraine. So this highly trained elite killing force of Russia is equipped with the latest in wooden gun technology. So don't let the prop fool you. These babies will give you some splinters for sure. And of course, we've got Joe Fetterman, AP reporter. So I had to grab this meme. This is hysterical. And so this is just getting into the theater of the absurd. I mean, wooden guns, space balls. So what is this, right? You've got a narrative that's building, and yet they want to show you that it's just a theatrical production. They want to remind you that this is theater, but you still need to come and support the narrative, right? You got to get behind Ukraine. You got to do it. Who is Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky? President Zelensky went from playing a president on TV to leading Ukraine against an invasion from Russia. So the president of the Ukraine is an actor who played the president of the Ukraine. Just let that sink in for a minute. Here he is meeting with his chief military officers in a trench covered with branches, in his fatigues and his hard hat. He's a man of the people, right? Just an actor, but I get such a Justin Trudeau vibe from this guy. Zelensky formed the comedy troupe Kvartal 95, and in 2003, the group began producing television programs. So he was a comedic actor as well. In 2015, Zelensky played the role of the president of Ukraine on the show Servant of the People. All right. The show was so popular, Kvartal 95 created a political party named Servant of the People. So they just recycled the script of the show. That's what we're witnessing. It just it just went live. In 2018, Zelensky announced his candidacy for president and vowed to crack down on corruption. Yay! Zelensky won the election with 73% of the vote and was inaugurated in May 2019. Just in time. So we have an actor playing himself in a story about himself, playing himself. I mean, it's very meta. It's very meta. Still a reminder that this is theater, right? If we hadn't already gotten kind of the clue. So what about Putin? Putin's Hitler-like tactics and tricks and tactics in Ukraine. Wow. So they're comparing him to Hitler, the Boston Globe, and Putin's Nazi rhetoric reveals his terrifying war aims in Ukraine. But below that, Russia's president says he wants the denazification of Ukraine. So Putin is Hitler, and Putin is saying that he's hunting Nazis in the Ukraine. So these things, they contradict each other. It's not making any sense. Putin falsely describes Ukraine's government as a band of drug addicts and neo-Nazis in latest propaganda blitz as Russian troops fight to take Kiev. So Putin's assumption that there are Nazis in Ukraine and drug addicts is propaganda, false description. Nancy Pelosi compares Putin's invasion of Ukraine to Hitler's invasion of Czechoslovakia before World War II. So we got World War II getting tied in. We've got Putin being compared to Hitler, right? But we also have Putin saying, no, 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 the bad guys are actually in Ukraine. And we've got the media saying, that's a dirty lie. You're a Nazi. We're coming to get you. And so they really want you to remember and to recall that energy of World War II, the events that were playing out. This is like an echo. This is trying to tie this in to the narrative for some purpose, some reason. And of course, you know, this is just summed up right here. Putin equals Hitler. That's the other part of the narrative, right? Is that the Ukraine is innocent and Putin is Hitler, but even his own people don't support him because he's a tyrant and a czar and, you know, all of this stuff. But, you know, he's sending his troops over there with wooden guns. So, I mean, how serious can he really be? And what could possibly be going on? Russians turn on Putin. Massive anti-war protests break out in Moscow and St. Petersburg for fourth day in a row as Kremlin threatens to jail traitors. So now you can see that Putin is a dictator. Even his own citizens are rioting and protesting against him, and he's just arresting them and, you know, sending in his thugs to beat them down. But then at the same time, you've got a photograph from 2014 being used in 2022 to show what Putin is supposedly doing in the Ukraine. So all of his citizens are completely against him, right? And all he's done is send some troops in with wooden guns. And then the media has supplied photos from the past and passed them off as recent photos. Or there's so many other examples of just CGI fakery that we don't really have a clue what's actually happening on the ground in the Ukraine. We just don't. But there's so much evidence that it's not this, right? When you have to recycle a photograph. So this is an obvious thing too, right? This is intentional. Then this is certainly just driving home the point that this not only is this theater, but this is absurdist theater. This is the theater of the absurd. And I mean, just to end this little segment of it with this.
Our future to protect our freedom and our democracy. We are in the center of Kiev.
Oops.
We are here to protect Ukraine.
It looks like Mr. Bean.
The Russian position is about a little bit more than 2 kilometers from here. This is
there you go, buddy.
Very difficult.
That just did not happen. So, you know, the narrative is absurd. It's in your face that this is theater. The president of the Ukraine is an actor. And so, you know, from that perspective, you can see how a narrative is built and how history is actually formed from propaganda. So a lot of the history that we have, we call it propaganda, and we know that it's false. But now we can see how the next generation is going to view this particular thing. And of course, they're echoing back to World War II, which was this giant propaganda thing. And I'm not going to get into all of the World War II stuff in this video, but you know, most people should know what I'm referring to and what I'm talking about. It's illegal to even question part of that narrative anyway in certain countries. So, you know, we just see that those echoes are there, and it seems like they're there for a reason. Now, I don't know what that reason is, but you can see these parallels of how Hitler was portrayed in the media to the Western world, how he was painted as one thing when in reality he was something else. And even to different people, he was something completely different, right? Some people looked at him as like this Aryan avatar. Other people just looked at him as this benevolent leader. Other people saw him as evil incarnate, Satan himself. So who really knows who Putin actually is and what his motivations are and what, you know, his culpability is if this is just orchestrated theater, right? He's certainly just going to play the role of the villain right now. So, but it gets more interesting. I mean, beyond just how the media shapes the story, you know, what could possibly be occurring in the Ukraine and with Russia on a larger level, right? It's very interesting, something to explore probably further. I simply just noticed that there was a connection to something that had just occurred, which was the Super Bowl. And I did this whole video on how the numbers were very interesting, how they lined up together. Cincinnati meeting up with in the Super Bowl for the first time in 33 years. And so they had gone to the Super Bowl in 1989, January 22nd, 1989. Cincinnati went to the Super Bowl and they lost. And they lost to the San Francisco 49ers. 33 years later, they go to the Super Bowl against the Los Angeles Rams and they lose. And Cincinnati had been in the news prior to them going to the Super Bowl. And then there was this whole buildup to it. They canceled class for public schools the day after the Super Bowl in Cincinnati. And a lot of articles have been coming out now about Cincinnati since then. So the team going there put Cincinnati into the greater consciousness, right? Because most of America is focused on football. At least a good portion of them are. And so Cincinnati's in people's consciousness, as well as, you know, Los Angeles. But this was Cincinnati's second chance in 33 years to actually win a Super Bowl, but they couldn't do it. So we're just looking at some articles, and this article came out. Cincinnati's sister city of Kharkiv, Ukraine, under attack in Russian invasion. Here's why that city is so important. So here we have Cincinnati, the team that you know, battled and lost in the Super Bowl, and they have a sister city. It's the city that was, you know, invaded. It's very close to the border with Russia, and so it's interesting that Cincinnati and Kharkiv have been sister cities since September 11th, 1989. So just after the city's football team went to the Super Bowl and lost in January, the end of January, they make this sister city pact with Kharkiv on September 11th of all days, 1989. And so it goes on to talk about, all that they've done over the years with each other. And, sister cities is probably another topic to explore. It's very interesting why certain cities are paired with others. And many cities have multiple sister cities. Cincinnati has 9. Kharkiv is just one of them. But I thought that was an interesting connection there. But the 1989 year was also tied into Ukraine. Okay, so you've got a Cincinnati-Ukraine connection with the sister cities that were started in 1989, the year that the Cincinnati Bengals were in the Super Bowl and lost. So the revolutions of 1989 are not over, and neither is the resistance to them. The Ukrainian crisis is a story of the revolutionary spirit of 1989 and its nemesis, which is the Soviet Union, neither of which were thought to be alive in 2014, but both are alive. And every part of the world is going to feel the shock of their confrontation. This was from 2014, by the way. So this is something that's been in the works for a while. But 1989 was this year of these color revolutions, and the revolution in Ukraine that came out of those other color revolutions was the Orange Revolution. And they were unable to successfully, break away fully. It just, it said the Orange Revolution felt like a breakthrough because all the previous European revolutions had never shown an ability to penetrate into Russia itself, quite as if some places were destined to remain immune. But Ukraine was culturally and religiously and historically tangled up in Russia. If the revolution could break out in Ukraine, why not in Russia too? And why not penetrate southward into the Arab world? Within months of the Orange Revolution, the Cedar Revolution broke out in Lebanon, where a lot of people had evidently been paying attention to Ukraine. So this was like a series of fires that were lit, and revolutionary spirit began to manifest within these other surrounding countries. So that's interesting, this 1989 Cincinnati Ukraine connection. And the city is actually reaching out to Cincinnati for support now. And so I think that's why the Ohio governor specifically is making a big deal about pulling all of this vodka and, all of these ridiculous things. They're just making a big to-do about, look at what we're going to do. So there's definitely a connection here with these two cities and probably with the state of Ohio as well. Interestingly enough, though, that 1989 or this year's Super Bowl, with Los Angeles has a sister city as well, which is St. Petersburg, Russia, which was originally the seat of power in Russia. But of course, it's still a very large city, and they became sister cities in 1984. So you had Cincinnati representing Ukraine, and you had Los Angeles representing Russia, among many others here. But Russia's the one that's on the playing board or the game board right now. But Cincinnati is also linked to the Underground Railroad. So you also have this theme of slavery, but escape from slavery. And so, there are those like 100,000 Ukrainians fleeing into Poland. some of them by train, some of them on foot. So, this idea of an underground railroad helping the Ukrainians escape, and it's also definitely got some World War II flavor, right? And we're going to see some of that here. The tri-state area, speaking from the perspective of Cincinnati. So you've got Cincinnati, which is Ohio, then you got Kentucky and Indiana. People from across the tri-state have come together to show support for Ukraine in many different ways. On Saturday, the Jewish Federation of Cincinnati joined what it called an emergency campaign to send aid to Jewish communities in the middle of the conflict in Ukraine. So they're giving all of this support to these Jewish communities. So you definitely see that World War II narrative at play again, even though nobody really knows why Putin invaded Ukraine. We really don't. We have no idea. There's things that he has said, this is what we're doing, but nobody seems interested in listening to that. And then most of the articles that I've even shown say nothing about the motivation of Russia. It's all about how victimized the Ukraine is and how we all need to unite and be one in support of the Ukraine against the mean, bad guy, Nazi, Hitler archetype, Putin, the world conqueror. So, it's just interesting that now this is getting brought up also as part of the narrative. And Washington, D.C., the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum strongly condemns Russia's outrageous attack on Ukraine and is deeply concerned about threats to civilians and loss of life. In justifying this attack, Vladimir Putin has misrepresented and misappropriated Holocaust history by claiming falsely that democratic Ukraine needs to be denazified. Equally groundless and egregious are his claims that Ukrainian authorities are committing genocide as a justification for the invasion of Ukraine. So Putin's telling you what he's going in there to do, but the media is saying, no, that's a lie. That's egregious, groundless, baseless, doesn't make any sense. There's no genocide happening in the Ukraine, right? You can't misappropriate the Holocaust history, if that's even a thing, whatever that is. And so you've got the United States Holocaust Museum, which is just right here in DC. They're also just condemning this and shaming. They're shaming Putin for saying that there's Nazis in the Ukraine, which of course is baseless and absurd, right? That's what the media says. But they're not criticizing Nancy Pelosi or any of these other sources that are comparing him to Hitler. So you see how this works, right? Of course, you can't criticize those people for saying that. That would not be a misappropriation of Holocaust history. That is a proper appropriation of Holocaust history, right? Because it fits the narrative. Putin's TV station sneers at UK royal family's Nazi links. So now he's being called Hitler and a Nazi, and he's firing back, calling Ukrainians Nazis, and now he's pointing out the UK royal family's Nazi links. So he himself appears to be anti-Nazi, but they keep trying to paint him as a Nazi. It's fascinating. Main voices: invasion evokes ghosts of the Nazi past in Russia and the Ukraine. Again, just pounding that home that Putin is Hitler, Putin is a Nazi. It's crazy. But then, the Ukraine conflict, further false images shared online. He's this horrible monster, and yet nothing's really going on. We're getting fake pictures. We got wooden guns. Fact check, old photo of Ukrainians praying passed off as recent amid ongoing conflict with Russia. So again, just more fakery. But at the same time, you are completely demonizing this person and stirring up people's emotions and turning them against this common enemy in order to create unity amongst people. Very, very interesting how this magic works. And it's about energy, really. So the war doesn't even have to be real. That's the beauty of all of this, is that the war doesn't even have to be real as long as people believe it's real. But at the same time, understand that it's a complete theatrical clown show. So what is the Ukraine actually known for? Well, I'm just going to come out and say it. Like they are well known for child pornography and child prostitution. This is a Wikipedia article about it. Child prostitution in Ukraine is related to sexual exploitation of Ukrainian children to generate revenue. The scale of the process has a trend to grow and raises a serious concern in the international community. Okay, this is just one thing that's going on in the Ukraine, but this isn't being talked about. Here's another U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Ukraine-based hardcore child pornography website founder pleads guilty. A Ukrainian man who found and ran an international hardcore child sex abuse website pleaded guilty to running a child exploitation enterprise Wednesday and agreed to a 30-year prison term. So yeah, it's not just child porn, a lot of like the hardcore or crazy pornography that's edgy or borderline. A lot of those are hosted on Ukrainian servers. I met a dude that was in the Bratva one day outside of my office, and he wanted to bum a cigarette from me. And we just got to talking, and I was asking him, what do you do? And he was telling me that, he basically ran Ukrainian porn sites until he got busted. And then he started working for the government to help bust porn sites in the Ukraine and in Russia. It's not like Russia's exempt from this, but the Ukraine has been a hotbed for this kind of stuff. Ukraine police detained 4 men on child porn charges. In total, 8 children. Yeah, we don't need the details. You get the point, right? Porn involving children. More than 20 people were exposed in Ukraine. So the Ukraine is not spotless or blameless here. And of course, there was the narrative that has been growing that, of course, during World War II, Germany was not exactly doing what we're told they were doing. And they were trying to rid certain elements in society from their influence on the German culture, and that they wanted to inspire the people, and they wanted to, make Germany great again. So the idea that they wanted to get rid of pornography and prostitution, and they wanted to instill these higher, more moral, ethical values within the people. I'm not saying that's what Putin's doing either. He's sending people with wooden guns. So I don't think he's serious. I do think he's serious at his job of playing the villain right now. We've got to have the evil villain, the bad guy, to unite us. And really that's the magic of this, to harness that unity energy, and that pouring out of love and support to the Ukraine. What's that all about? I don't really know. But you're starting to see that this stuff is just woven into the fabric of the reality itself. I mean, the connections between the football teams and the cities and all of this, like, that's not something that was orchestrated. These are just things that are there, that are a mystery, but they tell us something, that there's something deeper at play here. There is a cosmic story that is unfolding, and we're witnessing this right now. And it's war. The war drums have been pounded, and Russia has invaded. And now we must all get behind and give our energy to the Ukraine, to the actor who's playing the president in this meta version of absurdist theater. Anyway, that's kind of how I see this whole situation. And but I definitely feel like on a different level, there's certainly something interesting happening right now. But it's well beyond, is there war? Is there not a war? I mean, come on. Wooden guns should tell you everything that you need to know. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll see you later.